Once upon a time, in the bustling town of Akopa, there lived a young couple, Ifeoma and Ekene. Their love was the kind of love that people envied. Ifeoma was a beautiful woman who managed a thriving drink store downtown, where she sold soft drinks, malt and beer. Ekene, her husband, was a successful banker. Ekene had opened the business for Ifeoma after a lot of persuasion from her. At that time, Ekene had used his life savings to start up the business. Fortunately, under Ifeoma's careful management, the business grew and they were financially comfortable. Things were going on well with the couple. However, they couldn't bear children. Ifeoma would just cry. Ekene, I was hoping by now this house would be full of little feet jumping around. She would cry. But Ekene would just smile and tell her, don't worry, everything will be just fine. 7 years has passed, but things never became fine. They had tried everything to conceive. They had seen doctors, visited fertility clinics, and even consulted traditional healers, but nothing seemed to work. Though Ifeoma tried to be strong, the weight of the empty nursery and the constant side talks from neighbors and other people started disturbing her. Ekene's family, who lived nearby, began to voice their concerns. Ifeoma, when are we going to hear the cries of a baby in this house, eh? His mother would ask each time she visited the apartment. She would say it lightly, but the words stung. Ekene always dismissed these remarks, reassuring Ifeoma that he would always love her and that with time she would have her own babies. Yet, the pressure kept mounting. Ifeoma poured herself into her business. She found herself becoming more reserved, spending longer hours at work to avoid the stares of neighbors and the hushed whispers. Still, she held on to the hope that Ekene's love was strong enough to withstand the growing storm. Ekene's mother became increasingly vocal. One Sunday evening, she arrived unannounced at their apartment. Ifeoma opened the door, her heart racing as she saw the stern look on her mother-in-law's face. She greeted her politely, hoping that it was a short visit. Ekene! Ekene! His mother called, her voice echoing. Where are you? Come here, we need to talk. Ekene, who had been in the bedroom, sighed and came out. He sat across from her, glancing uneasily at Ifeoma, who was standing awkwardly by the door. You two have been married for 7 years now, his mother began, her voice harsh and direct. And still, no child. What are you waiting for? Don't you hear the talk from neighbors? Everybody in this neighborhood is talking about your childlessness, and yet you feel reluctant, she shouted. Ifeoma sat quietly, gripping the edge of the sofa. She felt a wave of nausea mixed with humiliation wash over her. Ekene looked at his mother and then at Ifeoma, his eyes flickering with discomfort. Mama, we are trying, Ekene replied. We are not God. It is God that gives children. When the time is right, we'll carry our babies, he replied. God, his mother scoffed. Ekene, you keep a chair, a furniture that can never bear fruit in your home, and you are hoping on God? What time are you talking about? You've had 7 good years already. You have given this woman more than enough time. If she can't bear you a child, maybe it's time you start thinking of alternatives, she nagged. Ifeoma felt the sting of those words, each one like a dagger to her heart. She bit her lip to keep from crying, hoping Ekene would caution her. However, he remained silent, casting his eyes down to the floor. His mother's words lingered in the air, heavy and painful. When his mother left, the tension in the room was palpable. Ekene, Ifeoma began, her voice trembling. Why didn't you say anything? What do you want me to say, Ifeoma? Ekene snapped, standing up abruptly. Do you think I enjoy hearing this? Everyone is asking, and I don't have answers. Ifeoma stood up, her hands clenched into fists. I'm trying, Ekene. I'm trying every day. I even got fertility pills from the hospital a few weeks ago. They said it will help. But you know these things are not in our control. Ekene sighed and turned away. I know, he muttered. But they are not going to wait forever, Ifeoma. We need to figure something out. Ifeoma stared at his back, feeling a chill creep into her bones. For the first time, she felt truly alone in their struggle. 3 months later, Ekene came home one evening slumping on the couch and burying his face. He muttered, I've lost my job. They fired me. His fists clenched and his eyes narrowed. I saw this coming, but I never took it seriously. That new manager, he said, throwing his briefcase carelessly on the floor. He just didn't like me. He's been planning this for months. I saw this coming. Oh no, I'm done for. My life is over, he said, shaking his head in disbelief. Ifeoma felt a pang of sympathy. He walked over and sat beside him, placing a comfortable hand on his back. It's okay, Ekene. We'll get through this. You'll get another job. The months that followed, Ifeoma took over and maintained the household expenses without a single complaint. She would give Ekene money for upkeep and would also sponsor his travels for interviews within and outside the town. However, Ekene's attitude began to change. He would get irritated at trivial things and would start arguments that were very unnecessary. One day, after a heated argument, Ekene shouted, Just look at yourself. You're getting really fat and unattractive, Ifeoma. See how big you are. You haven't even conceived though, not to talk of giving birth, and yet you're so big. He sneered. Ifeoma stood frozen, her heart shattering at his words. The fertility pills she had taken had caused her to gain an extraordinary weight. It pained her to see herself that way, but more than the pain, she really wanted the child. You are fat and barren, Ekene chuckled. The following months were unbearable. Ekene was hardly at home, but wherever he was, he made it a point of duty to make her life unbearable. He would make sly comments about her weight wherever and whenever, even when they were around friends. One night, at a birthday party hosted by one of their neighbors, Ifeoma reached out for a piece of spring rolls on the table. Ekene, sighting her from afar, laughed loudly. My love, careful oh! I wouldn't want you to get any bigger than I can handle. Their friends chuckled uncomfortably, and Ekene's cheeks burned with shame. She placed the spring rolls back on the table, her appetite evaporating. She excused herself to the bathroom, where she stared at her reflection in the mirror, tears brimming in her eyes. Why do you let him talk to you like that? Her friend Kemi asked her later that evening as they stood on the balcony away from the crowd. Ifeoma forced a smile. He's just stressed. Losing his job has been so hard on him. Kemi shook her head. Stress or not, that's no way to treat you. You deserve better, haba. Deep down, Ifeoma knew Kemi was right. But she also knew how society viewed a woman who left her husband, especially one who had been struggling to conceive. She was trapped in a world of expectations and fear. One night, Ekene came home, smelling of alcohol. He had definitely had enough to drink. I need to talk to you, he screamed. I need some money from my business. Ifeoma looked up from her phone, concern etching her face. From your business? Money? For what, Ekene? Rent, he grunted, collapsing onto the sofa. I need money to pay for 1 year rent. Ifeoma frowned, confusion mingling with dread. Rent? Rent for what exactly? I don't understand. We own this house. What are we renting house again for? Ekene laughed bitterly. For me and my family. Her heart skipped a beat. What are you talking about? She whispered. He looked at her, his eyes cold and unfeeling. I have a 2-year-old son with another woman, Ifeoma. She's pregnant again, and I need to take care of them. I need the money. Ifeoma felt the room spin around her. No, she breathed. I won't give you money. I can't give you money for another woman. She screamed. Ekene's expression hardened. Don't try me, this fat and barren woman. I am just asking you for rent to save your face. I don't want to bring this woman here just because of the small respect I have for you. But if you want to show me that you are stubborn, I will deal with you. I built this house with my sweat. I bought that shop for you. That money you think that you have is all mine, and I can take as much as I want from it. For whatsoever I want to use it for, you better leave this house if you will not give me the money that I'm asking. Ekene shouted. I will never let you have it, Ifeoma screamed, storming out of the house. Then you better get ready for me, Ekene continued. Ifeoma walked through the streets that night, her mind replaying all the things Ekene said to her. She was dumbfounded that Ekene had been cheating on her for 2 years. She finally realized that the incessant visits and absence of Ekene was because of another woman. She decided to spend the night at Kemi's place. Kemi advised her to leave the house and stay in her apartment for some time so things can cool off, which she gladly agreed. 2 days later, Ifeoma went to pack her things from the house. She had decided to stay away for some months until Ekene came to his senses. As she walked into the house, she met a young woman cradling a 2-year-old child in the sitting room. She was heavily pregnant. You must be Ifeoma, the lady said, looking at her as if scanning her soul. You fit the description perfectly. Fat and barren, she muttered. What did you say to me? Ifeoma said, badging to give her a slap. Just immediately, Ekene's mother, who was at the kitchen, rushed out. You dare not touch my daughter-in-law, she screamed. Ekene, hearing voices, also came out, papers in hand. Madam, you're here. This is for you. I have been looking for you since. Where did you go to? They are divorce papers, and I am claiming everything, including that shop and the money that you keep refusing to give me. After all, they are all in my name, he said. Ifeoma took the papers and rushed in. She packed her bags hurriedly and left, trying not to cry. As she left the door, hot tears streamed down her face. She let it roll freely as she thought of all the sacrifices she had made in the marriage and the business. He was right. The business was all in his name, but she had invested her time, her energy, her sweat to build it up to where it was. When she got to Kemi's house, she explained everything to her. Kemi was really disappointed. I'm not going to fight him, Ifeoma told Kemi. I will let him have it all. If my God is God, he will fight for me, she said. I need to start my life afresh. I have some money saved up. I need to find a house, Kemi. I need it. Kemi and Ifeoma started the search for a house immediately. However, Ifeoma changed her mind, stating that she didn't want to stay in Akokwa any longer. She told Kemi she wanted to move to Onitsha to start a new life where nobody knew her. A few weeks later, they had successfully found a small apartment somewhere in Onitsha and had made plans to go there the next day. However, Kemi woke up to notice that Ifeoma had been vomiting all morning. What is wrong with you? She said. We are supposed to go to Onitsha today now. Are you okay? I don't know what's wrong with me. I've been nauseous since morning and I feel so weak. These past few weeks have been something else. I feel so weak every morning and I'm always craving for Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola. You need to visit the hospital, she said. Ifeoma went to the hospital and to her greatest shock, she was 3 months pregnant. She cried bitterly upon realization. Now that she had lost everything, what would she do? How would she take care of the baby with no business or job? After 7 years. After about a few months, when Ifeoma felt better, she moved into her small apartment in the city with Kemi's help. She wanted to stay far away from Ekene and the family and focus on rebuilding her life now that she was carrying a baby. Kemi also helped her to secure a loan in the bank, which she used to set up a business in Onitsha. She worked hard to keep her business thriving, pouring all her pain into making it a success. Fortunately, the business thrived and she hired more staff to work with her due to her pregnancy. Months later, Ifeoma gave birth to a healthy baby boy. She named him Chukwudi, meaning God exists, because he was the embodiment of hope and proof that miracles could come when it's least expected. She held him close in the hospital bed, kissing his little tiny forehead as tears of joy streamed down her face. "You are my everything now," she whispered to him. "My gift, my light." The days that followed, Ifeoma started to work on her weight. The birth of Chukwudi had brought so much light to her life. She started dieting and exercising, and not long after, Ifeoma lost so much weight and was glowing again. Meanwhile, back in the apartment they once shared, Ekene was growing increasingly restless. His new partner, Chidinma, was very demanding. She had 2 children for him, and despite the money Ekene provided, Chidinma was never satisfied. "I don't understand you, Ekene. You told me you were very rich and comfortable. Why are you giving me crumbs? I don't get it. I need money to take care of myself and your children. Please, do better," she would always complain. Meanwhile, the business Ifeoma left behind had crumbled through the years due to Chidinma's reckless spending and improper management, and the family was barely surviving. Ekene had gotten a job, but it was not paying enough to sustain the family. Soon, Chidinma filed a divorce when he caught Ekene cheating with another woman. She was angry that Ekene, who had promised her a life of comfort and bliss, was barely surviving. She was also tired of living with Ekene, who could barely provide for her and her children. In her divorce papers, she was claiming the house and the custody of her children. She had cunningly persuaded Ekene in their early years in marriage to make the documents again in their names. Ekene, driven by love, had gone ahead to amend it at that time. After seeing Ekene with another woman, Chidinma found an excuse to leave Ekene, so she angrily moved out of the house with the children. Ekene was furious and filed his own counter petition for the custody of his children. Unfortunately, in court, he was told that those children were not his. "It cannot be true," Ekene insisted. "I need a DNA test." A DNA test was conducted, and when the result came out, he was shocked to realize that another man had been with his wife all these years. Ekene was devastated. Meanwhile, news of Ifeoma's success and the birth of her child spread through the city like wildfire. It didn't take long before it reached the ears of Ekene's mother in Akokwa, who had not seen or spoken to Ifeoma since the bitter separation that happened 3 years ago. Packed with guilt and regret, Ekene pleaded with his mother to pay a visit to Ifeoma on their behalf, hoping to make amends. One sunny afternoon, as Ifeoma was tending to her store, she glanced up and froze at the sight before her. Ekene's mother stood there, her once fiery eyes now dulled by sorrow and regret. "Ifeoma," the woman began, her voice cracking. "May I come in?" "How did you know my place?" Ifeoma asked. I asked your friend Kemi, she replied. She refused at first though, but I've been going there for a month now. She finally told me this morning. Ifeoma hesitated for a moment, but then she nodded, gesturing to her to come in. Take a seat, she said. The old woman sat down, her hands trembling as she fidgeted with the edge of her shawl. I've come to apologize, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. For everything, for what I have said to you, for how I treated you, just for everything I have done to you. Ifeoma remained silent, her gaze steady as she listened. Ifeoma, the woman continued, swallowing hard. Ekene has brought ruins upon himself. Do you know he cheated on Chidima as well? Chidima was mad, and she filed a divorce and took all the children with her. Ifeoma's eyes widened in shock. The children? She echoed. She took them? The old woman nodded, wiping a tear from her eyes. Yes. And now she's claiming that they weren't his. She even forced him to take a DNA test, Ifeoma. Ifeoma sat back in her chair, her heart pounding. And what happened after the DNA test? Ekene did the DNA test, the woman whispered, and found out that none of the children were his. She screamed. The confession hung in the air like a dark cloud. Ifeoma felt a complex mix of emotions, anger, sorrow, vindication. After all the pain Ekene had caused her, he had been living a lie. That's good. He got what he deserved. So what does he want from me now? Ifeoma asked, her voice steady but cold. My daughter. Ifeoma. He wants you back, the old woman admitted. He realizes now that he made the biggest mistake of his life by losing you. But more than that, I want you to forgive us. I want to ask for your forgiveness. I know I pushed him to treat you the way he did. I see now how wrong I was. Ifeoma looked at the woman before her, the one who had been her greatest adversary. She saw the pain in her eyes, the deep regret. She took a deep breath and spoke. Forgiveness is not something you ask for lightly, she began, her voice calm and firm. I have spent years, healing from the wounds that both you and Ekene had inflicted upon me. Now I've found peace and happiness now. See my son, she said, glancing at her son who was playing with a toy in the corner of the store. My life is full. I have my son, and I've built a new future for us, me and him. Ifeoma sat in silence for a moment, contemplating her mother-in-law's words. Forgiveness. How easy it sounded when spoken, but how difficult it was to truly forgive. She continually stared at her son, playing on the store's rug, his laughter filling the air with joy. For years she had carried the burden of hurt and betrayal, but seeing her son now, she knew that it was time to confront her past fully. Tell Ekene he can come to see me, Ifeoma finally said, her voice steady. Her mother-in-law looked up, surprise widening her eyes. Thank you so much, Ifeoma, she whispered, her voice cracking with relief. He is not the same man. Life has humbled him. Ifeoma nodded but remained silent, her mind drifting to the upcoming encounter with Ekene. She wasn't letting him back into her life, but she needed to face him. Not for him, but for her own peace of mind. 3 days later, as the city paused with usual chaos outside, Ifeoma prepared herself mentally for the meeting. She sat in her store, nervously twisting a bracelet on her wrist as she waited. Ekene stepped inside, looking around hesitantly. He was a shadow of the man she once knew. His shoulders hunched, eyes sunken, and his clothes hung loosely on his now gaunt frame. Ifeoma, he began softly, his voice barely a whisper. Thank you so much for agreeing to see me. She gestured to a chair across him. Sit down, Ekene. He sat, avoiding her gaze as he clasped his hands together, fingers twisting in his lap. Silence stretched between them, filled with all the unsaid words of the past years. Finally, Ifeoma broke the silence. Why do you want to see me? Ifeoma took a deep breath, his eyes red with what seemed to be unshed tears. I came to ask for your forgiveness, he said, his voice trembling. I was a fool, Ifeoma. I was blinded by my pride and the pressure from my family. I see that now. Ifeoma crossed her arms, leaning back in her chair. You didn't just hurt me, Ekene. You destroyed our marriage. You took my business. You left me in the cold. You did all this for a life that turned out to be a lie. Her voice was calm, but carried the weight of all the pain she had endured. Ekene looked up, his eyes brimming with tears. I know. I lost everything, Ifeoma. My job, my family, my self-respect. I was selfish, arrogant, and I took you for granted. I see that now. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I am begging you, please, let me make it right. Ifeoma shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. Make it right? How, Ekene? How will you make it right? There's no going back to what we were. Too much has happened. This is 3 years now. She looked at him squarely, her gaze piercing through the haze of his regret. I've moved on, oh. I have a son now, and he's my world. You're not part of that world. You are in the past. Ifeoma swallowed hard, the reality of her words sinking in. I understand that, he said. I totally understand. But I want to be there for Chukwudi. He's my son, isn't he? His voice trembled, betraying his fear and hope. Ifeoma hesitated for a moment. Yes, he's your son, she confirmed. But that doesn't mean you can just walk into his life now and expect to be the father. You abandoned me when I needed you most. And that's not something I can easily forget. Ekene slumped in his chair, his hands covering his face. I know, he choked out. I was weak. I was wrong. I should have fought for us, but instead I let my family, my ego, and my foolish desires destroy everything. I don't expect you to let me back in. Please now, Ifeoma, I just want to be there for him. I need to try. Ifeoma regarded him silently for a long time. He looked like a broken man, lost and regretful. She had imagined his encounter many times in her head, but how she would lash out, berate him, make him feel the pain he had caused her. But now, seeing him in this state, she felt no satisfaction, no triumph, only a profound sense of pity. Being there for Chukwudi isn't something you can decide on a whim, she said finally, her voice gentle yet firm. It requires commitment, it requires responsibility, and most of all, it requires your love. If you're serious about this, it will take time to build that relationship, and it will be on my terms. Do you understand? Ekene nodded eagerly, his eyes shining with a mixture of hope and gratitude. Yes, I understand, he stammered. I will do whatever it takes. I just want to be part of his life. Then, we will see, Ifeoma replied. You will have to end that right, Ekene. I will not allow you to hurt him the way you hurt me. Ekene nodded again, his expression solemn. I will, Ifeoma. I promise you, I will. As he left, Ifeoma watched him go, a weight lifting from her chest. She had faced her past, reclaimed her power, and now the future was hers to shape. I hope you enjoyed watching this story. Ifeoma and Ekene's story is one of love, betrayal, and ultimately resilience. Ifeoma faced immense pain from societal pressure, an unfaithful husband, and personal struggles. But she found strength within herself by letting go of bitterness and focusing on her own happiness and that of her child. She rebuilt her life, proving that beginnings often come from the hardest endings. Ekene's journey serves as a warning. Mistreating those who love you can lead to regrets and loss. Meanwhile, Ifeoma reminds us that true strength lies in moving forward and reclaiming our self-worth. So if you ever feel trapped in life storms, remember Ifeoma's courage. It's not easy, but brighter days await those who choose to rise. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it inspired you. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more interesting videos. Remember, no matter how dark it gets, you can always find your light. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.